This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
He is. Did you catch that last night with Barkley taking a shot at Jason Tatum?
I did not catch that. I missed that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You just heard the highlight or low light where, that turnover, that was a Jason Tatum turnover. He got that in the middle of a hockey highlight. With only Barkley could end up doing that. How you feeling, first of all, since we know you ended up getting that COVID that everybody's getting?
Yeah, I feel much better, thankfully. I had a mild case, so it wasn't too bad. And I feel pretty much 100% at this point. So very thankful for that.
You're ready for Vegas, is what you're saying.
I'm ready for Vegas. The schedule's out. It's getting closer. Just a couple weeks away. We'll be there, Big O. It's going to be fun.
That's right. That's right. And you're going to have to come join us over at Tommie Rockers. Damn, that as big as that event is, you know that the NBA doesn't have a Radio Row for it yet?
Really?
I mean, listen, the way radio is nowadays, they're so cheap. They don't spend anything on anything. So,
right.
But I would expect, like a Vegas or LA stations, San Fran, whatever, maybe would go there,
Yeah, the West Coast, yeah.
Yeah, West Coast. Obviously, I don't expect anybody from the East to be that crazy and nutbags to go there, and really cover it because they care about sports. Nobody does those. Of course, but
only lunatics do that. They go, yeah.
Hey, man, but we are giving South Florida fans all over the world.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Right? Summer League for the Heat is always interesting because there's always the next. Last year was Max Strus and Omer Yurtseven. This year, Omer's gonna be there again, so he's gonna, I'm sure, dominate Summer League. There'll be somebody else that surprises us. So Summer League for the Heat is always interesting.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I love the fact that Yurtseven is going to actually play, because that you look forward to the Highsmith kid was interesting.
Yeah,
and then there'll be another guy.
There'll be some guys for sure.
Yeah, there'll be a guy that's going to catch our eye and go, "Wow, he found another guy."
Yeah, you got to give that guy a two-way contract. Before somebody else signs him. It's always that conversation in Summer League.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking forward to it. I just wish they had a Radio Row. Although, again, with budgets nowadays, it's probably not even worth exploring. Now, we did have some Heat news yesterday. As expected, PJ Tucker did opt out. So talk to us, first of all. What do you think is going to develop from this?
I think the Heat, this is not breaking news. The Heat want PJ back.
Sure.
Right. And the expectation was he was always going to opt out because why not? Right. He had 1 year left at $7.4 million. Even if he doesn't get a raise, he can get more years in 1 year. Especially at 37 years old, that's important, right? You want that security of multiple years, 2 or 3 years. So I would expect the Heat to make, with non-bird rights, I think they can offer him, $8.4 million, the starting salary. So they can give him a $1 million raise, plus give him maybe 2 or 3 years. So I would expect something like that where they give him that small raise, $8.4 million, maybe a 2-year, I even give like a 5% raise on the starting salary. So maybe something like, 2 years, 18 or 19 million. And they keep him. So I would expect PJ to be back. Obviously, there's going to be interest for him. The problem is there aren't any really contenders that have cap space. So any team that's going to try to get him that, I'm sure he wants to win, any contender that's going to go after him has the exception pretty much only. So that's not much more than the Heat can offer, especially when you consider there's no state taxes in Florida. So I think the Heat have a really good shot of bringing PJ back.
I was talking about this earlier, and I'm convinced he's coming back.
Yeah.
Why? I think he liked the vibe of the team. I think he and Butler really, it looks like they formed a bond.
Definitely, yeah.
And then here's a couple of other things. He already got his championship, so he doesn't need to go chase. And then I think the other thing is, he played a lot of years in Phoenix. Now he played here in Miami. He ended up playing up in Milwaukee. I don't think he really wants to play up in the cold. So he probably play somewhere more south. But since he already has his championship, it's a no state tax. He's got a good vibe. They love him there. Pat loves him. He gets along with Jimmy. I just think everything is perfect for him to come back. Now, the question I have for you is if he does come back, is this one of those things that we will see late, just like maybe Oladipo? Because if they're going to trade for a whale, they must first accommodate and trade for the whale first before they re-sign their own. Now with PJ, they don't have a birds rights thing.
Bird rights, right?
They do with Oladipo, so it doesn't matter. Does it affect the whole PJ Tucker thing before or after a whale because they don't have bird rights? Please explain.
No, I don't think so because they're not using cap space, right? So they're already over the cap. They're pretty much using an exception to sign the non-bird exception to the 8.4 million if they go that route, or they can use one of the mid-level exceptions to sign them. So that just basically they're over the cap already. They're not trying to when you have cap space, you have to go in a certain order of signing guys to make sure you use the cap space correctly. But they're not in that situation right now, so I don't think it really matters. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if PJ's quick, or maybe he takes his time, like you said, like Victor Oladipo last year. He surveys the market. There's no harm in doing that, right? He knows the Heat want him back. Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra were very clear in that message after the season. So, I don't think you can't rule out it happening maybe in the first few days of free agency just because the Heat don't have cap space and they don't have to do they don't have to do that type of thing in a certain order with their situation.
Now, in Las Vegas, marijuana recreationally is legal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Ira Winderman did his segment yesterday from Las Vegas after visiting Planet 13 because he thinks that the Heat would be crazy enough to make the move for Kyrie Irving. I say no way in hell would they make a move for Kyrie Irving. No way in hell, and I don't care what video you bring up of Jimmy Butler talking about Kyrie Irving a couple of years ago. That was a couple of years ago. Right now, Jimmy Butler wouldn't want to play with his uneven ass as it is. I think it would drive him crazy. So let me ask you, are you as high as Ira Winderman, or are you on my side here that says, no, put it down. No smoking right now. It's no way. What do you think?
I'm on your side. I'm on your side with this. I can't see the Heat. I mean, Kyrie is very gifted, one of the most skilled players in the NBA.
Yes.
But you just don't know how many games you're going to get out of him. He could play 20 games. He could play 50 games. He might not want to play one day.
Doesn't want to get vaccinated. I mean,
it's right. So I don't see the Heat really coming close to. And you haven't seen the Heat even mentioned in any of those reports. The Lakers, the Knicks.
Clippers.
And I will point out, you made this point, but that Jimmy Butler video floating around, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
A lot has changed since then with Kyrie and Jimmy and both their situations. That was a long time ago. So I don't think that's as relevant as many people are making it seem.
Jimmy Butler will kick his ass. Literally. Physically, I'm talking about. If he pulls some of that crap, I don't think Jimmy would just tolerate it, man. I think he would lose it with that guy. Like, what do you mean you're not playing? Right. Why? Because they're not feeding somebody in some country over there or something? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, I think it would drive Jimmy effing crazy. I think you would risk seeing the Jimmy we've seen in other places that he's been with that are dysfunctional places. And he kind of loses it with those kind of situations. He's come here and he's found the people that think and act like him. All of a sudden, Kyrie Irving is not what you think and act like. So why would you go in that direction? And that's where me and Ira completely disagreed yesterday on that one. Yeah,
and also you have to think about it from the Heat's point of view. Kyrie wants a long-term contract. He wants guaranteed money. I mean, a team has to feel comfortable doing that at this point, and I just don't see the Heat they were so close to a championship. To make that type of trade, you're gonna have to not blow the team up, but give away valuable pieces.
Yeah.
Without the guarantee of Kyrie playing availability. I mean, you just don't know when he's gonna be available. So I would be pretty surprised if the Heat did that, just because, again, we talked about this last week. They're not desperate, right? They want to make the
Right.
team better. They'll make a move if that's possible. But they're not going to make a move out of desperation. I think that's kind of what that would be.
Bradley Beal says he's decided where he wants to play next year. Dude, I just saw him on a public court in Washington that they were, a new court or whatever. I think he has zero intentions on leaving there. Is that what you're expecting to hear?
I'm not sure. I mean, Bradley Beal is an interesting one because for so long, so many people have been expecting him to demand a trade. It hasn't happened yet. Maybe he's reached that point. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like he's like trying to create
But
suspense.
do you see LeBron in him? He looks like a nice kid that he wouldn't pull a LeBron where the decision, and here we go. I'm screwing you right now. I'm going somewhere else.
Right.
You know what I mean? I almost feel like he's the kind of kid that if he wanted to leave, he would have already said it.
Already done it.
And the fact that he has reiterated over and over, and he shows us over and over again that he's part of the community and he does things there and part of the community. It like everything he's done has convinced me that he actually wants to stay in Loserville. So
That could be him creating goodwill. 2 days later saying, I've done everything I could here. I've spent most of my career here.
It's a great point.
It could be. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate, but
I
just
never thought of it that way because it's a great point on your part, because I go back and I think of Anthony Davis, and he did the polar opposite of it.
Right.
And he kind of, and so he came out with the shirt and all that stuff, and it was kind of one of those things. And what was it? Was it Dwight Howard with Stan Van Gundy and all that kind of stuff? That was kind of a dysfunctional thing. But that would be kind of, man. Then that would say, okay, he's got a little nasty streak in him there if he does that.
I mean, so there's always going to be fans that rip guys for leaving, but with Bradley Beal, do you think that would be like a huge outcry in Washington?
Not at all.
He's been a good player that's committed himself to that city and has really tried to make it work. So who knows what will happen? We'll find out next few years. But I'm just saying I wouldn't rule out the possibility.
Mitch Richmond gave his all to Sacramento. Right. There was not a problem with him leaving. If Damian Lillard leaves, it's the way you go about it.
For sure.
The way LeBron did the decision, that you left the city hanging, the owner hanging, that was uncool. That was not the right way. Anthony Davis, the way you left New Orleans. Okay, it's not a great situation. There's other ways to leave instead of being so cold and callous. The fans are already suffering because they have to deal with the weak ownership or the situation, all of that. The player does not need to instigate the thing and make it even worse by, pissing all over the place. And so there's been plenty of players that have played their time. Ray Bork did it for many years in Boston and it didn't work. And then they finally did a really classy thing and traded him to Colorado. And then the Avalanche beat the Panthers in 96 for the championship. And Ray Bork, who gave an entire career to Boston, never was going to sniff a cup, was traded to a place where he can win the cup. But why? Because Ray Bork handled it with class. Hey, in a way, some people, I wasn't one of them, didn't blame Zoe for leaving to the Nets after the kidney ailment. I was not one of them. I was kind of pissed because, this guy gave you a $55 million contract and, you never played for it, and you had the kidney ailment, and then you're just going to pick up and leave. And I kind of felt bad for Mickey there in that sense. But people understood. He gave his time to the Heat, and they were what considered was a championship caliber team with Kidd and those guys. And so he tried it. I think people can live with that after the player has given his all and he tried to make it work. But we all know the player wasn't the issue. Just don't make yourself the issue and you'll be fine.
For sure. And I think if Beal decides he wants to try something new, I don't think there'd be again, I think he's one of those guys, right? He's one of those. But we'll see. I mean, he's going to have to make a decision here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. He has the player option. He could sign an extension. He could say, I want to be traded. He holds the power, right? Like so many of these stars. And he's earned that. So I would not rule him out as a possibility because he has those options and he hasn't committed one way or the other.
All right. So what do you hear? Any Donovan Mitchell news? Anything going on?
Nothing new. Other than that photo with the trainer.
Damn it, bro.
Nothing new.
Damn it. Jeremy Grant? Anything? That would be, if I can't get Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
That would be the fallback plan. I kind of like that one. Would you trade Tyler for him?
I don't know. So in that situation, PJ's playing off the bench, right? Have you re-signed PJ Tucker?
Or you can have Oladipo.
You can have all
Caleb,
three of those.
You can have Jeremy, Oladipo, and Caleb as your bench mob. You could, and this way you actually can take care of Tucker by not giving him as many minutes, keep him fresh, and that way Grant, Oladipo, and Caleb come in, and dude, that's a nasty three coming in and rock the house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But Tyler Hero was great he's sixth man of the year, right? So he was the best bench player in the league. So I mean, it's just tough. This is what I'll say. Like, if you do that trade, Tyler Hero is your best trade asset right now.
Right.
You have one shot at it. Jeremy Grant's that guy if you do it. You think he's the missing piece, you make that move. But then if Donovan Mitchell becomes available in 6 months or 8 months, you might not have that trade asset to get that deal done. So that's something you have to think about when you're saying, is Jeremy Grant that guy? Is he worth it? Because that will be really the Heat's big move, trying to put them over the top.
But I would imagine that if you're making the Jeremy Grant move, it's because you're convinced already you cannot make the Donovan Mitchell move. It's what
just can't tell the future right now at this point.
I'm only making the Jeremy Grant move after I've found out that I'm not getting anywhere with Donovan Mitchell.
Sure.
That, like Utah told us, hey, look, man, he's under contract for 4 years. We're building around him. We're not getting rid of him. We're going to build around him, because kind of the talk has been that they're getting rid of Gobert, which, by the way, would make all the sense in the world, that if you can dump Gobert, go dump Gobert and get somebody else that can complement Mitchell. And I get it. The problem is, for them, it's Utah. And if you don't draft them or trade for them, you're not going to get them to
it's tough. It's tough. That's fair, but you just don't, and you know how it is in the NBA. I mean, there's guys that come available that you don't even expect in 2 or 3 months. So it's just, you wouldn't be in that position at that point. If that does happen, maybe it doesn't, you wouldn't be in that position to really put together maybe the trade package you would if you still had Tyler Hero on the roster. So it's just something to think about when you're trying to make that type of trade.
All right, what are you working on in the Herald so folks can check you out, my friend?
Yeah, so this week's obviously the draft on Thursday. He had the 27th pick. Yesterday I wrote about, I kind of doing a series on different options that he'd have with the 27th pick. Yesterday I wrote about why they should the pick. Today I wrote a piece on why they should trade the pick. So just read both those stories. It gives you some perspective on both possibilities and maybe what the Heat are thinking at this point, 2 days before the draft, because we really don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, they could easily trade the pick, or they could make it if someone they like is still available. So just perspective with their situation entering Thursday.
Oh, by the way, I talked about this earlier on the show. How funny is this? The Magic are undecided on who they're going to get at number 1, Jabari or Chet. But this is the 4th time they've had the number 1 pick.
Crazy.
With Dwight, with Shaq, with Weber, and now this one. And Oladipo is the number 2 overall pick.
Wow.
So think about how many times Miami has never had the number 1 and they've got 3 titles. These guys have had the number 1 4 times, have no titles, and they end up losing all these players every single time. So whether Jabari or Chet get drafted, if they turn out to be good players, they'll be playing for somebody else 4 to 6 years down the line. I mean, that's just like, think about that vicious cycle that Magic fans have been on from day one.
Yep, the Heat has spoiled South Florida, that's for sure.
Big time. That'll teach you how much we've been spoiled.
Yeah.
No number 1 picks and 3 titles.
And the number 2 pick they got, they didn't actually hit on it because it was Michael Beasley. Right. They still made do and won a title a few years later. So
yeah, they got Michael Spicoli with the number 2 overall pick. Spicoli, you know who Spicoli is?
No.
Fast Times at Richmond High. The stoner in Fast Times at Richmond High. You're a little young. I figured you weren't going to pick up on the Spicoli reference.
I'm sorry.
Sean Penn Spicoli. That's all you need to do.
Okay.
YouTube it. Sean Penn Spicoli best of, and there you go. Okay.
I'll do that homework assignment.
That is Michael Beasley in high school. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Didn't work out. Didn't work out for the but like I said, they made do. Usually teams that don't hit on a top 3 pick, they're in a rough spot for the next 5-6 years.
Not these guys. They figure out a way to get back on track, man. They are just absolutely amazing. All right, follow him on Twitter at Anthony_Chiang and catch his work there at the Miami Herald. Subscribe first, please, and support Anthony and all the great writers there, like Michelle Kaufman and others. All right, my man. I appreciate you as always. We will catch up next week. Be good.
For sure. Thanks, Big O.
You got it. That's our liquor split matchup. That's our liquor split Miami Heat and NBA report.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.